Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also Running on Ice, the newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. Today, we welcome back the one and only Juan Mizell, CEO and founder of Grip. Welcome back to the show, Juan.
Thank you for having me, Mary. Good to see you.
I'm excited about today because, it's been a minute since we've revisited with Grip. Some people might have seen you on the 3PL Summit, but we're getting back into our cold chain life today. And so one of the big announcements that you guys had recently is that you just opened up a new facility in Michigan. What about Michigan made you guys be like, yes, this is it. This is where we're putting up a new facility?
Yeah, so that's correct. We have 5 facilities now through the country. We have the best and fastest coverage for direct-to-consumer frozen and refrigerated goods, so perishables. And in Michigan specifically, just outside of Detroit, because that's what the data said. So we looked into where the orders were going. We run a bunch of simulations and scenarios, and we said, where within the country with our already facilities existing in Jersey, Florida, Texas, and California, can we have the biggest impact on getting much, much faster to the customers, improving quality and reducing cost? And the answer was exactly where we ended up placing the facility. And what that means is that we get to the entire Michigan, of course, in one day in transit, 24 hours. Then we get to Chicago, all the Chicago and surrounding market in 24 hours. And then we get to Western Pennsylvania in 24 hours, so one day. And then the very key part about this location is that we also get to the Northeast in 2 days, so 48 hours. And we don't use that as a primary source for getting there, but it's an amazing backup, specifically because that's always the region with the most density. And we have a facility in Jersey that gets all the way, from Washington to the northern tip of Boston and part of New Hampshire in 24 hours. But we know that that's a critical spot for our customers. We know that sometimes inventories, if they're growing very, very fast, can be tight. So they can always use that other backup facility to cover Chicago in 24 hours, but also get to the Northeast in an acceptable way as well. So that's how we landed there. We launched it late Q4. It's been going amazing so far. And we're proud to say that we now have the fastest coverage in the country. So we get to more than 75% of the US population in 24 hours, depending on where our customers are. That can be anywhere from 85 to 80% sometimes. We just run a few simulations for customers where we got them all the way to 80% of their customer base in 24 hours. And that's essentially as fast as it gets in the industry.
I think that you kind of touched on something that I personally didn't think about, but also I'm not running a temperature sensitive fulfillment service. But that's something that I didn't even think about until you brought up. And that is, the spot in Michigan, yes, it does offer more one-day points and it does expand your network, but it also serves as a really great backup for that Northeast option. So kind of no matter what, you're building fail-safes in. So that way, if, New Jersey's overwhelmed and it needs to get up to New Hampshire, or maybe, it needs to go into parts of Pennsylvania or even Virginia, like you're kind of right there that you can just slide right in and say, don't worry about it. We still got it. You don't need to worry about it because we have a secondary spot that you can do it. And I really like that you guys have essentially kind of built in your own fail safes there.
Yeah, absolutely. And specifically for companies that are growing very fast, that like to manage their inventory tight from just to be smart with cash and be able to keep growing. Sometimes, like as an example, us at ButcherBox, when we were getting started and scaling up the company super fast, we had like a week of inventory on hand, a max 2 weeks on a good day. But when you have a week of inventory on hand and all of a sudden you're spiking the sales and you have higher sales in the Northeast because you ran a promotion that people just cut up much more in the Northeast versus any other part of the country, then it's going to run out. And to be able to provide that experience to the customer, I think a backup, just being able to get there on a backup, it's very good. It's not necessarily need it. If you don't have it, I don't think you should panic about it, and go run and just add another facility just for the sake of it. But if you're at a certain scale and you're growing pretty fast and you're tight on your inventories, especially nowadays where cash is expensive, then it's a good safeguard.
I absolutely love that because, again, it might not be right for everyone, but you guys do kind of have that power and that ability to just say, like, do you focus on making on what you love? You focus on making delicious, beautiful cakes that are going to make people happy, and we'll focus on getting it there in one piece and not damaged and in perfect condition.
You
Because
make it sound politic.
I mean, you guys make it look easy. Um, So when it comes to expansion, because obviously, you guys are very smart about where you've grown, but you've also grown very quickly. Because I mean, even in the last 2 years, you've added 4 or 5 facilities. I can't remember if that fifth one
Yep.
was like more than that. Um, but like you guys are obviously expanding, but you're doing it very smart and in a very intelligent way. So kind of what other geographic regions are kind of on the horizon or maybe not on the horizon, or is it truly just kind of dependent on your customer base and their needs?
So geographically per se, we're all set for now. I'll dive into that in a little bit, but we now get to 100% of the US population in 2 days or less, so 48 hours. And then with 80% of that being, 1 day or 24 hours. So geographically, like in most instances, it does not make a lot of sense to open up another facility and spread your inventory thinner. In some instances, might make sense, but it's not really, a huge bang for the buck at this point. But that being said, we are expanding our New Jersey facility at some point in Q2. The expansion and the work, it's almost done. And we're going to start, adding more customers and transitioning new customers to the facility as well. So that's a very exciting project that we've been working on for some time. And then in Florida, we also just expanded into a bigger facility as well in Q4. So those are, two of the most recent expansion plans that one is completed and the other one is going to be completed very soon. So geographically, in terms of expansion, not per se, but there are some expansions that we're doing within the regions that we already have a big presence on.
I was gonna say Florida is one of those areas that has really kind of, for lack of a better word, it's popped off and it's temperature controlled and it's cold chain. I mean, I know the Port of Jacksonville has done a lot to really help boost imports and everything like that, but that is one that has really kind of surprised me in that temperature controlled market as to like really taking off quickly, because it's not as dense as like the Northeast as you would say, but I do love that you guys have like even grown within your new spaces because even New Jersey and Florida, those are still pretty new facilities is in there within the last 3 or 5 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you also see that, there's also population expansion. More people are moving to Florida, more people are moving to Texas, more people are moving to, suburbs of certain cities after COVID happened and, they just want bigger spaces. And you still see some of that, not as fast paced as you saw geographically on like 2022 or 2023, but you still see some of that. So, the more that happens, then the more demand you're gonna keep having in states like Florida, for example.
I like it. You guys are like really keeping an eye on everything. And then on top of your obviously keeping aware of regions and demand and everything like that, one of the things you guys do that I've always been very impressed by, because obviously as we've brought up many times in the temperature controlled space, there's not really a lot of room for error, because if you have a pallet of jeans, you could sit that out on a not 200 degrees, but like you could sit that out in the middle of the Arizona desert and those jeans would still be jeans. Like they just might be really warm, but it doesn't affect like them being worn by the end consumer. So, but you can't do that with, a birthday cake or pretty much anything in your network. So how do you guys really take that, the basically the things that absolutely cannot happen and really kind of plan around reducing those failures and not having shippers waste so much money on lost product or damaged goods?
So the biggest value unlock for us in the industry and what I think has worked so well with the companies that we onboard is our path of vertical integration with facilities and technology. So when we started and we were thinking about it, and we developed our first pieces of software and infrastructure, the technology was, it was amazing. It was adding, of course, value to customers, and it was improving what they were doing already. But you can't really change an industry that is this fragmented and this complex by just being the software layer on it. You really, really need to understand what happens on the ground, and you really need to make sure that the virtual world is speaking to the physical world in this case. And that's what we set out to build a few years ago, and that's what we have invested so much, where we have even gone as deep as developing our own scanning solutions for our facilities that now speak directly to the order management system, and then that speaks to Shopify for our customers, and then that speaks to the final end consumer and the final customer. So it's what we saw. We saw, hey, all this right now, it's very fragmented. The systems don't speak to themselves, and there's so much room for error because of that. And that just creates issues when you don't necessarily know where the boxes are. You're not necessarily reacting dynamically to weather changes and to the final customer complaining or having feedback on the final boxes, and you're also not being proactive about it. But it's not necessarily that you don't want to do it, is that you might not just have the capacity on a technology, you might not have access to the data, you might not have access to be able to make those decisions as dynamically as you want. But then also on the fulfillment front, you can do whatever you want with software, but if you're not actually then controlling what happens on the ground, you just cannot implement a lot of the changes that you want to implement. So that's sort of what we do. That's the problem that we set to solve, which is, hey, this is a very fragmented industry on the physical infrastructure, on the technology infrastructure, and we have the background and we have the experience, having built a lot of these at ButcherBox, where we said, hey, there's a better way of doing this, and we just have to go all in to solve it. So that's some of how we just prevent the errors and improve quality for our customers.
Yeah, I definitely think going all in to solve it is something that you guys have 1,000% done. Because I mean, what started off as like from where you guys started to where you are now is completely different. And to say that you guys have really built like an all-encompassing solution, I would say is pretty accurate. But also, I mean, it has to be a huge I want to say it has to be like a huge need from those customers of like finally getting those solutions all in one, instead of going, okay, well, I have my temperature monitoring devices over here, and then I have my fulfillment over here, and I have to have someone here who just copies and pastes things, and basically you have to it requires so many extra steps to get everything in one spot throughout all these different softwares and different hubs and other things like that, that it feels like it's almost kind of a nightmare until you guys were like, hey, what if it doesn't have to be horrible all the time?
Yeah, there's trying to create the solution in-house creates a lot of unneeded overhead on both fronts, the technology front and the team front. And so many processes that you're almost like forced to build internally because you just don't have a better solution for it. But that's going to come and bite you in the future, because then you have to spend so many resources to maintain it. And it's pretty cool. We've seen both cases. We've seen a case where it's almost like a brand new, like a brand launching that's new, that has an amazing product, and they can start super fresh day one, and they don't actually have to go back and undo some of the things that they do. So it's very simple for them to get up and running. We onboard them in like 5 minutes into the technology. It's very cool to see. But then we also have brands that are doing hundreds of thousands of shipments on a monthly basis that have been forced to build some of these internally, that we essentially start integrating the simplest way possible, and then we take a step by step on them undoing some of the mess that they had to do internally to be able to grow the business and survive. And it's been pretty cool to see that happen as well on both fronts. Because these companies that been around for some time, they have amazing volume. They're some of the most recognized brands in the industry, and then now they're thinking about it differently. They're like, what if we don't actually have to maintain these? Like, what if there's actually a better way? What if we can actually add more technology and improve service and reduce costs? That's essentially world class right there.
I think that that has to be kind of, I mean, we love the ones that just come in, hit the ground running, and like are ready to go and basically have no baggage to carry with them. But the ones that you have to come in and say, okay, what do you have existing? What do you have here? What do you have set up? Because let's slowly turn one thing online at a time, because ultimately, like, you don't want to mess up an entire organization's history and you don't want to mess everything up, but at the same time, like, what they have is not sustainable. It's not, it's not long term, it's not going to contribute to their long-term success. So I feel like those have to almost kind of be a lot cooler to be involved with and say, okay, one step at a time, we're going to try and fix this, but also nobody touch anything that's not this one specific thing because we don't want to break it.
Yeah, I like it. Those onboarding processes are yeah, are pretty cool. We set up every time we're doing one of those, we set up specific meetings for it, break it down, piece by piece. It's all execution for us, and that's that's what we like.
Yeah, so it's one of those where it stinks that it takes longer to onboard you, but if you do it step by step and do it correctly, then you're not going to sit there, turn everything over, and then have, 2 months of like, well, we thought this inventory was here, we thought it was here, we thought this was going, and all these orders like missed their shipments or they got damaged or whatever because they fell through the cracks. And even though it does take longer and it is a little bit more of a headache, it has to be really nice knowing that like it's done correctly, you're not going to miss anything, and in theory, you won't have any major business disruptions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've learned, of course, by doing it multiple times, and it gets much more efficient every time we do it again and again. Where we have extremely detailed, project management tasks for every single onboarding that we do. We work very close with the customers. We have multiple meetings beforehand, and then, of course, following up on what are the metrics that matter as soon as you onboard someone into the system.
Yeah. So when it comes to kind of the taking a step back and looking at the overall perishable e-commerce market, what are some of those trends that you see happening, and what are some of the things that you see really kind of coming up and being something that people need to pay attention to?
It's here to stay. We've seen exponential growth in the industry for the last decade or so. I think I told you this story once, but when we were getting started at ButcherBox, it was all about how do we actually get someone to understand that they can buy a box of frozen meat and it gets delivered to them. So there was a pretty big barrier to entry from the consumer standpoint. And nowadays, that's almost non-existent. Almost everyone around you like has ordered frozen products in the mail to this point, or if not, they know someone who has. And what that means is that the consumer barrier is not there already. Now it's just about creating the absolute best products that consumers want. So that just means that the window of opportunity is huge for companies that do amazing products. The window of opportunity is huge for companies that can focus on the brand building, on the ingredients, on the sourcing, on the manufacturing. So that's why I think that the industry is at its best right now, is here to stay, because the consumer knows it, the consumer understands it, the consumer is asking for it. And then also the all the movements that you see in food right now and in nutrition, with going back to nature, with just much cleaner labels and much better products for people. That means that a lot of those products now require refrigeration and now require to be in the fridge, to be in the freezer, and that's how you preserve freshness in a lot of these products, because you're not adding all those chemicals and extra ingredients to the products. And people want those products, they want them delivered to their houses, they understand the convenience of it. So that's why I think the industry is in its prime time.
Oh, 1,000%, because it's not a matter of what can I get delivered to me or is it capable of getting delivered to me. It's now, I want this item. I want it delivered to me now, and I want it delivered to me like as fast as possible. And then also, because it's not so much convincing consumers to do it, it's convincing consumers to reorder and to keep going on and to keep expanding and getting more and more delivered to them. Which I think is an interesting point in and of itself, because that being said, that's why those service failures are just not an option anymore, because I know that if I order something and it comes damaged, or if I order a box of chocolate and it gets melted, and you see those kind of I don't know the official word for it, but it's like you get that like the separation line where like you see like that white streak in it. It's still fine to eat, but like it's been like melted and reformed. Like if you start to see that, that's not really an option anymore. And so that's at that point as a consumer, I know that, okay, well, this hasn't stayed in its temperature. Something's wrong with it. So maybe I won't order in the future, which is ultimately the exact thing that people don't want, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's messing up the delivery experience is a very fast way of throwing your money away as a company, because you have already acquired a customer. It's expensive because you have to, do your marketing efforts, you have to, create your branding efforts, and then you have to send it, you have to pay for the product, you have to pay for fulfillment, for the shipping, everything that goes into it. And when you're just messing up that experience, the likelihood of that customer coming back and ordering from your brand again are pretty low. So bringing those failure rates down and increasing the chance of success is something that we see that increases the lifetime value of the customer exponentially, and then makes customer acquisition easier, and then ends up just building much more equity for the company.
Oh, 1,000%. Because I know that if I order a fancy birthday cake and have it delivered versus making one or picking one up at the store, and it goes well, then I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna tell my friend, oh, well, I ordered this cake and it got here and it was great. You should try it. And then suddenly it's growing. Versus if I sit there and go, well, this cake was horrible. It came melted and it was a disaster. Then to me tell my friends it's going to be so much harder to get that customer even to give me a chance again. And that's one thing that I do appreciate about the temperature controlled e-commerce part of thing, is that there is that extra challenge of that temperature. Whereas, we see e-commerce rising even like outside of the temperature controlled space. But I do like that extra challenge that comes with the temperature controlled aspects of it.
We love it. That's what we're doing it.
Hmm. So, other than, keeping up with all things temperature controlled, we are coming towards the end of our time today. And we already kind of have heard your best dad joke and know your cereal is a soup stance. So today, Juan, if you could only eat one color of food for the rest of your life, what color would it be?
It would be whatever color you consider a medium rare steak to be.
Would that be brown or would that be red? Because the outside of it's brown.
Yeah, see, so it depends on if you're thinking about the outside or the inside. And the outside, I like some very dense grill marks on it. Whatever a grill produces, I'll eat. So I can just munch all day on, medium rare ribeyes and just veggies like straight on wood.
Okay, all right, I like that. I guess that would probably be like brown, unless we could call char marks a
Char
color.
marks. There you go.
I like char
This
marks.
is made
I
up a
don't know if
color.
that's really a color, but it's a style,
It'll be a color from now on.
Exactly. Like if there's like glittery blue, we can have char marks.
There you go.
Okay. So if anyone has any tips on how to ship you the best medium rare steak, or if they have any questions about anything today, where can they find you outside the show?
LinkedIn, they can reach out to us there, or our website, gripshipping.com. I'm also on LinkedIn or Twitter or X nowadays, so you can reach out to us there. And yeah, we'd be happy to chat. We'd be happy to see what you're doing. We'd be happy to see how we can help. Even if it's just anecdotally, we'd be happy to, just dive and help.
Fabulous. You would be happy to help someone get a medium rare steak delivered to them.
Yes.
Or maybe not a medium rare. That would be hard to keep it at a specific temperature. But
Well, you can pre-cook it and send it.
there you go. That would work. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mary. Good to see you.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/running on ice. See you on the internet.